I'll just introduce briefly our speakers again. We have Chanduji, Chander, but we call him fondly Chanduji. He's a Samarth SoochnaPreneur with the Digital Empowerment Foundation. So Samarth SoochnaPreneur program is run by Digital Empowerment Foundation and in the last 5 years, the aim of the program has been to transform and enable access to digital tools, training, digital infrastructure with assistive technologies and accessibility features to persons with disabilities to become digital entrepreneurs themselves, to serve communities further in India. And so he will be speaking here mostly about his journey from in becoming a digital entrepreneur, in becoming service providers from being solution seekers. The second speaker we have is panelist we have is Jyothi. She's the lead technical project manager at Youth for Jobs Foundation, who have made the largest and latest technology investment in South Asia's first AI-triggered accessible livelihood platform exclusively for persons with disabilities. We have our third panelist, Sooraj, who is the founder and director of Prajaahita Foundation. It's a grassroots NGO working towards building an ecosystem overall that advocates for empowerment of persons for disabilities and with disabilities. And Mira, finally, with Broadband India Forum. This is a policy forum based in Delhi, working in telecom and technology space. So I will request all the panelists to elaborate on your work when you are speaking. So to set the context of today's panel, right? So as technology has taken a center stage, there is an increasingly compelling narrative that we have to go digital and to access any citizen welfare schemes and services, be it even being a consumer in today's market, etc. And we also see, if you see the session design, the title itself suggests that there is a move now by Indian legislations to adopt a digital by design approach. And today in this panel, we want to understand what do we mean by digital by design framework, right, in these legislations, and what do they mean for persons with disabilities? Are these approaches inclusive of the approaches that are to be taken to make digital design inclusive for persons with disabilities? So here, I think to start with, I will start with Chanduji, who is himself a Samarth SoochnaPreneur, right? So I will ask him the first question. What kind of supports, as a SoochnaPreneur based in Hyderabad, in Telangana, could you help us understand what are the digital tools, applications you use every day at the center, and what challenges do you face while using them?
Hi, myself Chander, Chandu. So मैं तेलुगु में या बात करना चाह रहा हूँ, तेलुगु हिंदी में। लास्ट 2 साल से मैं सोचरप्रेन्योर से जैसा काम कर रहा हूँ और सर्विसेज दे रहा हूँ मेरा हैदराबाद सेंटर में, जो आम आदमी के लिए 90% जो एप्लीकेशंस हम यूज़ कर रहे हैं वो आधार के लिए ऑनलाइन में मिल जाएगा, और कैश इनकम जो ऑनलाइन में हम कर लेते हैं, और जैसा ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस, ऐसा पूरा एप्लीकेशंस ऑनलाइन में हम यूज़ कर लेते हैं। उसके लिए डिजिटल टूल्स मोबाइल फ़ोन्स यूज़ करते हैं और कंप्यूटर, प्रिंटर ऐसा यूज़ करते हैं। एक्चुअली मैक्सिमम ये ज़माने में मैक्सिमम 90% काम मोबाइल से यूज़ करते हैं, मगर जो हमारे पास आने वाले ओल्ड पीपल और जो पढ़ा नहीं वो लोग वो सोचते हैं कि मोबाइल में क्या चल रहा है, कंप्यूटर में करना चाहिए ये लोग, तो ये काम होता है, मगर वो लोगों को थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम होती है, वो अंडरस्टैंड पूरा काम मोबाइल में होता है, और मोबाइल में बहुत सारी स्पीड से काम होता है, वैसा हम मोबाइल में यूज़ कर लेते हैं, और वो लोगों के लिए जैसा कंप्यूटर भी यूज़ करते हैं, और जल्दी से जल्दी हम 90% काम तो जैसा आधार कार्ड का, पान कार्ड का या कैश इनकम जैसा वो काम हम हमारा सर्विस देते हैं वहाँ हमारे सेंटर से। थोड़ा बहुत दिक्कत भी आती है। पहले के ज़माने में अगर करंट बिल बनना चाहिए और दूसरा कुछ बिल बनना चाहिए तो लोग समझते हैं कि ऑफिस करने जाना है और लाइन में लग के घंटे के जैसा बनते थे, और हमारे पास 1 मिनट में हो जा रहा है, तो ये सही में होता है नहीं होता है, थोड़ा बहुत उन लोगों को डाउट आता है। तो हम उसको ओवरकम करने के लिए बहुत सारे वो लोगों को एक्सप्लेन करना है। पहले बात तो हो गए तो नेक्स्ट बार से वो लोग अंडरस्टैंड हो जाते हैं कि हाँ यहाँ भी हो रहा है, वैसा काम ईजिली हम कर लेते हैं।
हेलो, हाँ जी चंदू जी। एक आप बोल रहे हो कि डिजिटल टूल्स एप्लीकेशंस मिलने से आप ये सर्विसेज आप खुद अवेल भी कर सकते हो और खुद प्रोवाइड भी कर सकते हो एज एन एंटरप्रेन्योर। तो यहाँ पे व्हाट काइंड ऑफ सपोर्ट सिस्टम्स, मतलब डिजिटल लिटरेसी इनिशिएटिव्स हो गया या स्किल डेवलपमेंट ट्रेनिंग हो गया, मतलब व्हाट आर दोज इनिशिएटिव्स जो एंड सपोर्ट सिस्टम्स विच पर्सन्स विद डिसेबिलिटीज नीड to engage with these digital services independently?
जो पहले का आंसर दिया ना, जो बहुत सारी काम 90% काम आम आदमी के लिए तो छोटे छोटे काम आ रहता है, जैसा आधार का, पान कार्ड का, ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस का, वैसे जो ऐसे काम जो हमारे जैसे लोगों को ट्रेनिंग मिलना चाहिए, कितना फास्ट से ये काम कर सकते हैं वैसा ट्रेनिंग मिलना चाहिए। अगर मैं नया हूँ ये पूरा सीखने के लिए या डायरेक्ट काम करने के लिए घंटों हो जाता है, तो हमको ये कैसा यूज़ करना है, कितना फास्ट से यूज़ करना है, ये ट्रेनिंग मिली तो बहुत आसानी से हो जाएगा। जैसा 90% ट्रेनिंग तो यूट्यूब ही दे देते हैं, मगर यूट्यूब क्वेश्चन का आंसर नहीं देते हैं थोड़ी बार। सो हमारा ट्रेनर्स रहता है, वो लोगों को जूम कॉल में या जी मेट में हम मिल के वो लोगों को क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं और वो लोग स्क्रीन शेयर से जो आंसर देते हैं, जैसा वैसी ट्रेनिंग होना चाहिए कि ये ज़माने में बहुत सारे काम ऑनलाइन में हो जाते हैं, तो वैसा ट्रेनिंग मिलना चाहिए।
Okay, just to sum up what Chanduji is saying is that added to digital infrastructure, to the digital design that will enable digital access to assistive technologies and accessibility features, there's need for digital literacy training and excessive skill development training, right? So here, I think, so the question is that for us to implement, for us to build this infrastructure, we need to have, an account of the number of persons in disabilities in India and the persons with diverse disabilities in India. And today we have only the 2011 census of India. The statistics just say that 2.2% of India's population is persons with disabilities, and this is a data from 2011. So owing to lack of data due to not release of the latest census, we do have a systemic problem, right? We don't have any measure how to deploy the infrastructure for necessary requirements. So here I think I will come to Jyothi. So given your experience at Youth for Jobs, could you give us your view of the current challenges of the digital ecosystem, in general impact of persons with disabilities in India? Yeah.
Thank you, Arpita, for actually starting this discussion and, having an audience of such young minds who are probably ready to absorb whatever is, being told here. Yes, there are many challenges. There are many critical barriers for the meaningful access and participation of persons with disabilities in our digital infrastructure. And I think the first challenge is accessibility. Okay, so let's just take an example of a food delivery app. Forget about the larger ones or the daily needs ones, such as booking my ticket and going on to IRCTC, which is the Indian Railways app, right? So even as a regular person or a non-disabled person, I cannot actually maneuver and go around this app, right? Then if you imagine how would a person with disability, blind, visually impaired and low vision are, let's say, on the higher end of the spectrum. Catering to them is a larger issue. But what about speech and hearing impaired persons, right? They speak a different language, which is the sign language. So how many of our apps or how many of our daily use apps are catering to this audience? Now, this is a generic question, which is, can speech and hearing impaired persons not read English? Yes, they can. But it's like me trying to converse in Telugu with my Nepalese friend here. Right? They don't understand English in a way of conversation. For them, English is probably a hold on to as a railing. It is not the main stairway. They require a sign language interpretation of how the portal is accessible, how the app is accessible, what is it that this app is even doing, right? Or if you talk about low vision candidates, then they're, for example, let's just take the screen. Okay, can somebody summarize the screen for me? What is the screen saying? As a low vision person or as a visually impaired person, all I want to know is that there are a couple of principal partners, that there is a media partner, that there are a couple of logos which are associate partners. The event is just about so-and-so topic, right? And that it is a panel discussion, which means there are a couple of more people, that's all. And this is the kind of summaries that miss on the digital infrastructure. None of our digital infrastructure websites or apps cater to this particular audience mode, right? And it all starts from, have I as a company, anybody, okay, whether it is a public sector or private sector or NGOs, have I as a company thought about accessibility? Have I made it internally accessible via policy, externally accessible via a statement that I'm declaring to the world that, hey, accessibility and inclusion matter a lot to me. Okay, this is not thought through, so that's a big barrier. Second, of course, is what Chanduji has already addressed, saying that there is a gap in not just the digital literacy which is available, but also that it is not adaptable for accessibility. NSDC, which is our which is India's largest skilling platform, has recently made their platform fully accessible, and it takes a lot of time and investment to realize that making a paradigm shift towards accessibility is a huge thing. But a company can start by taking small steps that, hey, which of my digital assets which are visible to the outside world are possibly going to be accessed by persons with disabilities, and how can I start there, right? And of course, the last thing that I'd like to touch upon, which is a barrier, is the unaffordability of assistive devices which are there. For example, JAWS as a software costs about 50,000 rupees, the license of it. So how many of our visually impaired persons are we trying to digitally empower by giving them JAWS as a software which can read just about anything that is suited for persons with disability? And last is, because I come from this foundation called Youth for Jobs Foundation, and our primary motive has been skilling as well as placement and employment of persons with disabilities, along with providing them livelihoods such as entrepreneurship and employment opportunities, etc. Is that when we are thinking of persons with disability and empowering them, we should also look at where their destination could be, right? Simple, like if an IRCTC app, why would I be looking at it just to book a train ticket? Similarly, if I'm trying to say, I have a jobs platform and I'm trying to make it accessible, the end goal is that I would like persons with disability to find a job. So then the entire ecosystem of everybody participating in the dialogue also comes up. I hope I've not taken too much time. Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Jyothi. Just one more question. So while you say that there is a severe lack in digital design, which is leading to this exclusion, do you see any successful collaborations between the government, private sector, and across across other stakeholders? Yeah, could you highlight some of them?
Yeah. So again, thanks for pointing out the question in the direction of light, and that we're not entirely in darkness. No, there is a lot of work that is happening in the digital space. Digital Empowerment Foundation, for example, okay, the number of sign language videos which they cull out for simple words, just to empower persons with sign language, just to empower them, saying that, okay, this is a new word, collaboration is a new word, and this is how it is signed, right? So there is a lot of work which is happening, and whatever work happens, it has to be a multi-stakeholder approach. No organization can say, me first, or I will gather that first. Instead, they should just think of them as field catalysts. They should try to bring in multiple stakeholders such as NGOs. What would NGOs do? They would help take these digital literacy programs, which the government is culling out in large scale, and help them take it to the grassroots level, right? So they can just get a batch of candidates and say, we'll teach you how to use the mobile phone for, let's say, a Sukhi app, right? So NGOs play a major role because they are the ones which are there at the grassroots level. Then the government of course is doing tremendous work. It is just that sometimes the government would also have to think in the simple things. For example, Digital India Accessible India campaign, right? The Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. They started it off very well because they said that let's make everything physically accessible, and let's make sure that this happens by so and so date, right? But I think there we should also say that digital accessibility should be included, not just in the form of a compliance, but more like a it must happen, right? It's not a choice anymore, that it has to be rolled out. Or for example, the PMG Disha, the Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Sakshartha Abhiyan, right? That's also started. It's a digital literacy program. It's empowering millions of people across India with all the digital tools required for banking or any other thing. So there also, a simple focus would be, how can this particular program be suited for persons with disabilities? And even though we are talking of 2.2% in the 2011 census who have been declared as persons with disability, when you actually break it down in the form of the numbers, a lot of persons with visual impairment or a lot of persons with neurodiversity are out there who would need special focus in order to understand and use these apps, right? And finally, I think from the civil society, we just have to make sure that advocacy and sensitization becomes a part of all our digital accessibility campaigns. And another thing is that wherever the government is saying that, hey, we have an assistive tech device and we are providing this free of cost, you should just look at how accessible those forms are in order to fill them to get the assistive tech device, right? And that's where the civil society can play a larger role. You, me, many others, volunteer organizations can say, we are here to take this to the next level. So come to us, we'll help you fill the forms, and then you have the assistive tech device. Yeah.
Thank you, Jyothi. And here, I think as civil society, coming from civil society and as policymakers, we do tend to always, go with a very homogenized approach to addressing rights or, access to entitlements for marginalized communities. For example, persons with disabilities, again, are people who come from different intersections with different social identities, and everyone have multi-layered subjectivities with different experiences of marginalization. So as policymakers, as civil society, as people from different sectors, how do we accommodate those different identities and expressions in the digital design is a question that we should always ponder upon. And second is also, there's an increasing conversation about agency, right? And with newer legislations coming in, such as the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, right? So there's a lot of contention about how how much agency do persons with disabilities have in terms of, taking a decision about their personal data? So, and it also, again, brings the question of children and children with disabilities. So here, I think I'll come to our next panelist, Sooraj, who is the founder and director of Prajaahita. Can you please elaborate, based on your work, particularly your efforts to create an inclusive residential environment for children with disabilities? Have digital tools played a role in this process, and what challenges do children with disabilities face in the digital ecosystem, and what kind of support systems you also extend to ensure that a safe environment?
Hi, I'm Sooraj. I run a non-profit organization called Prajaahita. So we work with all ages of disability, but specifically focusing on children with disability. So since I'm working with children with disability, I thought I'll do a 3 play with all of the participants here. So are you ready for a small play? Yes or no? So can everyone take your phone and from your with your left hand, and could you raise your phone up? Okay. So everyone has smartphone, right? Yeah, done. So just be there, let it be there for some time. Okay. So I just want to close your eyes and just unlock your phone and give your phone to your neighbor who is in your right side. Close your eyes, unlock your phone, give your phone to the right side neighbor. Anyone there? Okay. Neighbors, did you got the phone? Yes or no? You got it. Oh, you don't have it. So some don't have it, some has it. Okay. So I think you are actually now carrying your neighbor phone. For the privacy matter, keep it just there. So you can open your eyes. So next experiment is, so everyone, some are still closing your eyes. You can open slowly. Yeah. So the next experiment is, with the phone in your hand, could you actually take a photo in a selfie camera of your friend who is sitting in the back, with your left hand. So could you take a selfie? Okay, you should use your phone, neighbor's phone. Take the selfie camera. Take a photo who is sitting in the top back. So that lady, top back. So left hand, no right hand. Just left hand. Left hand. Are you able to take the last phone? Last photo? Yeah. Okay. So let me know once you're done. You can zoom it. It's up to you. You can decide. But I need that last person's photo. So how many in the first row can see the last person? In the phone or directly? How many of you in the front can see the last person? You are able to see? Okay. No. How many is able to see? Yeah. So some people who actually have phone, you can zoom in and see who she really is. You're able to see, right? You can see. Yeah, you can see the last person. You are able to see it. Is it by zooming in the phone? Yeah. Okay. So last one. Really last one. You can just give back your neighbor's phone back to them, please. Could you just give back your phone back to your neighbor? I think everyone is holding your own phones, right? Yeah, now you are all holding your own phones. I just want you to just close your eyes again. So this is the last game. Go to Instagram. Go to Instagram and post that photo. Is it possible? No. Possible? With closing eyes. It's possible. How can? Can you say it? Like how is it possible? Like by closing eyes and posting in the Instagram, it's possible. Yeah. So it's actually possible. Like that's how people with visual impairment actually post. How many think a person with visual impairment can be a camera person? How many? Can a person total blind become a camera person and be a photographer, professional photographer? How many things it's possible? Yes or no? So one of my friend, one of our trainer, who is actually a total blind, teaches people with visual impairment to be a photographer. How we are using is like we are using the voice talkback feature of Apple, which will actually navigate and locate where is the person standing so that he can rightly take the photo. So something similar, like, so just see the scenario. We do the same Instagram posting together, like every day, like either click or like. Imagine a scenario where you are not able to do it. So I just gave 3 games. One is use your only left hand, which is not a regular usable hand by us, and take a selfie and zoom it on that side, which is like really tough. So imagine like what happens to a person who have no upper limb, or a person who is actually using his leg to navigate all the activity. So smartphone is like, they say it's very easy to navigate. So imagine like if I am totally, hands are not moving, legs are not moving, how can I navigate? So there should be some solution to it, right? So there is a good Indian startup which actually worked for it, which helps to navigate the smartphone or any IoT device with their head movements. So that is a solution which can solve close to 30% of person with disability problem. So if you see in India, there are 15% of total population of person with disability as per WHO. So we are actually marginalizing a community, the access of basic information. So here is where we actually work. So we do 3 activities. So we see whether can we have the expressions possible or engagement possible in different way, so that I can accommodate all kind of disability together. So be it person with visual impairment, so we use voice navigation for it. So person with hearing impairment. So we are like, I'm little sad that for a like person with disability meaningful connect, we don't have a sign language for the session, because it was also an access, like reasonable accommodation for person with hearing impairment. So we do sign language or closed captioning, which will enable everyone to understand the whole process. So something similar. So technology is always a tool which will help the adaptation for individuals. So whenever we have, like, everyone uses Alexa or Google, Alexa for our Siri or Alexa, which was earlier used for a solution for person with visual impairment. So anything which we ensure making it accessible for people with disability will make it very accessible for other elderly or even for us to be more lazy. So one is engagement is something which we actually look in. Can we have technology which can enable the engagement more? Second is like how to have the representation. So that is something which is very crucial. So if you don't have it, like say in the table, you are not there. So are we there yet? So I'm still like, I'm thinking about it. Like if you see the total population, 3/4 of person with disability lack access to smartphones. So how will I actually avail these services? So engagement, representation, now. So action. So this is where like whole process comes in. So even now, government is actually thinking about everything at home with single digital Seva Kendra. So if I don't have a smartphone, how will I access all the government services? So everyone has Aadhaar card, a bank account. So now it's all the pension is coming to bank account. So imagine like I don't have a smartphone or any access to information. How will I know whether money has come or not? So this is like you are ensuring people to be a nomad in a 21st century life. So this is something which we do. So one is how can we enable more engagement among persons with disability and non-disabled people together in a space where more interaction happens. So when we actually see, we won't be able to actually use Instagram by closing our eyes. We know that this is the pain point. So we actually do that with more interaction. Second is like representing people with disability in common forum and try to solve the problem together. And third is like each call for actions happens for any social initiative is people with disability actually really taking action to it. So last week has an important milestone in India. So major thing is that Supreme Court made a mandatory that accessibility is a fundamental right for person with disability. So now I see like in next 6 to 8 months, the thought of accessibility gonna be like in good, like it may go a little more boosted up because of this verdict, and within a year or so we can have more accessible spaces as well as like digital platform for people with disability. So for children, it is one of the best tool for education. So what I see is like fundamental foundation learning is not there for children with disability because they have home-based education. So if you don't have a fundamental education itself, how are we solving the digital divide? Is the question. So first is like let's solve the basics first and make it accessible so that we can try to evolve for the second digital knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you, Sooraj. I think a big takeaway from your conversation is that it is so very important to make all the processes of adoption and building the digital by design approach participatory and consultative, right? And it begins with this remark that we should have also had made this more participatory, right? And that's a learning for us, yes. And second, also very important point that when we address digital divide, we are also talking about the larger social divide and the larger social inequalities that permeate through these structures, right? And that reflects on the digital ecosystem, that who are getting access and who are not getting access, etc. So here,
just example, I just want to say about social divide. If you see the total pension given to person with disability in India, each state ranges from 300 to 1,500. And Andhra is little for progressive in that nature. Andhra provide 3,000 as a pension. So if you see any access to internet, right now basic subscription is 149. So if I'm getting a 300 rupees pension, how can I access internet? So that's something like recharge, subscription, access is also a barrier for person with disability.
That's also a very important point. We are running a little short of time. So here again, I'll go to the next and final panelist who will help us also wrap this panel discussion. So here, given the session title that we have, we would like to ask you if you could please elaborate on what are the legislative safeguards and regulatory frameworks that are in place right now to ensure compliance and effective implementation of the digital by design framework, and what do you think are the indicators that should be we should be tracking to measure the success of this framework?
Hi everyone, my name is Mira. I'm a lawyer by training and I work in Broadband India Forum. After that really fun exercise, I'm sorry to go into legal theory, but connecting it back to the topic at hand. One very important milestone for this country also in 2023 is when the Digital Personal Data Protection Act got enacted, though it's yet to be enforced. And 2023 is also the year when we had Indian Telecommunications Act be enacted, and the rules are getting enforced by and then. One common thing if you see in both these legislations, right? So in section 53 of Indian Telecommunications Act as well as 28 of DPDPA, you have this word called this law or this particular person in charge should implement it in a digital by design manner. Now, what does digital by design mean? Saying that the processes which are implemented should all be online in nature. Now, as we are saying that, and as digital by design is increasingly getting implemented through legislations that involve technology, we need to keep in mind and ask this question, is it accessible for persons with disabilities? And that's where I really agree with Sooraj's point and even Jyothi when she said, right, when we think of minorities, we are not even considering persons with disability as one of them, right? And it's very strange because we've come so far. I'm sure all of us have a family member or know somebody who is a family member who is differently abled, but we are not even considering them as and you can see that even in DPDPA, for instance. So just a very basic thing is that if I am the person giving the data, I'm the data subject, the person collecting the data is the data fiduciary. Now in DPDPA, there's section 9, which says that children and persons with disabilities need a lawful guardian who needs to give parental verifiable consent. So they are giving consent for the child and the person with disability. Only then can they access particular applications, right? So are you seeing how patronizing it is for an Indian legislation to club a child and person with disability together and say that only with a lawful guardian can you get explicit consent to access, like from here, if I have to use Uber or Ola to go somewhere, my lawful guardian is supposed to provide consent for it, right? And if you compare that with other countries, it's a bit different, right? If you see even Australia or Zimbabwe, etc., where they do have mention of person with disabilities and digital by design in their legislations, but it's more assistive in nature, right? For instance, in Zimbabwe, the example I'd like to give is that they say that if the physician or a consultant claims that you can't give consent, then the lawful guardian can give consent. Similarly, with Australia, they have like welfare institutions in place where the person, the lawful guardian in charge should help in assisting the person with disability. Now, so there is a real strong need and change of mindset needed. But having said that, and coming back to India's law, so we have the RPWD, right? And in that recently, Rule 15, which said that all digital applications and websites should mandatorily have and comply and make sure that it's accessible in nature for persons with disabilities. Now, like Jyothi pointed out, compliance for that is taking a lot of time. Like even government websites haven't complied to it yet. And now there are CCPD orders coming in saying that you have to be complying within 6 months, 8 months, etc. So you need, the safeguard here is very simple, right? One is there is data which is getting collected, but if it's the data of a person who's differently able, how is a private company differently handling it, right? For instance, in Singapore, there's, I'm forgetting, I think it's 2030 directive which had come, which had one recommendation 14 which said that if the data is related to employment or if the data is related to health of a differently abled person, it needs to be treated differently, meaning that it needs to be confidential in nature. Not everybody who's disabled or differently abled would want the person who's collecting the data to know, right? So these are very, very minute things. Of course, access is important, but how much are you taking in consideration of the person, and they're beyond data subject, and why should you have that information in the first place, right? And it was really interesting to see this Instagram. I did not know by just 3 instructions to Apple you could take a picture and post it. But how much of it is aware to people? How many people know that? And that's when skilling, like you mentioned, is extremely important. And to wrap up this session as well, and I understand there is a time crunch, to go one by one, is that everything is online, from booking a train ticket till Aadhaar as much. And over here, conceptually to explain, if everything is online, one person is a data subject, the other person is a data fiduciary. So the person who's the fiduciary under the law is legally responsible to ensure that the law, like the data is not breached, and they have to follow certain compliance and guidelines, right? Second point is how you improve accessibility to ensure. Basic thing, like Sooraj mentioned, like this session could have had a sign interpreter. This session could have had captions in line, right? Or even when you were coming up the lift, you could see that, you know, there's a wheelchair, which is this one. So very, very small initiatives that not only companies take as well as the government by mandating through legislations and act, and even if they do, like Rule 15, to ensure that it's complied with, is the second point, right? And the third thing, of course, there are a lot of schemes, like you mentioned, the Accessible India campaign, and there are so many initiatives done by DEF, etc. All these needs to come to light, and we need to work together. Both, I mean, all 3 stakeholders, right? Like, which is civil society, private companies, as well as the government, should prioritize this and ensure that they understand that this is also a section of the society that needs some amount of attention and concentration in terms of inclusivity in nature. And lastly, of course, concluding to say that there are laws in place, but implementation of the laws is what always that takes time. And we also, wherever we go, we can be a little bit more mindful in terms of ensuring that people, wherever we're sitting or wherever we are also getting access to the things that we are able to get by virtue of our privilege. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming to this event, and thank you so much, DEF, for organizing this as well.